The exile part can look like a lot of things, but like, let's say it's like a young 4-year-old part. They're really, it's like, looks like a shrouded figure just covered up with a blanket in the corner of the room, and it's pretty tender. It's really vulnerable. So scared of being seen, so scared of trusting anybody, or feels so lonely or isolated. Feels like it's not lovable. Everyone hates it or wants it to go away. So then you'd work with that. You're listening to Parts and Charts. I'm Chelsea Owens, a therapist certified in internal family systems, and my co-host, KP Kajabowski, is an astrologer. We're testing the theory that IFS and astrology are mapping the same inner territory. Every episode, we put that to the test. Glad you're here.
We are here today, just the two of us, because I want to ask Chelsea about Exiles, which is a major concept in IFS that I am baby at. I just want to what's the foundational knowledge? And then also, Chelsea was texting me this week about how grieving actively with an exile is such an important part of the experience. And so I'm curious about that. And I think you've been doing some thinking on that.
Yeah.
But before we begin, I wanted to ask, what perfume are you wearing today?
Beautiful question. I just sprayed. This is not an ad. We're not sponsored, but we'd love to be.
We'd love to be.
Sponsored by perfume. It's Regime de Fleur Wildly Fig. I just got a sample, and I was telling KP she didn't get to smell it just yet, right?
It's new.
Yeah, it's new. And I am just so in love with it. I was surprised too, considering what the top notes and middle notes were. But it's figgy. I think it has cardamom, so there's some
Ooh,
deeper notes to it. But yeah, I wish
I
you could
love
all
that.
smell it as well.
And before we started recording, you said it's similar to DSM Durga's Debaser, but
Yeah.
not, right?
Also, we'll take sponsorships from literally any perfumers.
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about it on the pod every time. What
Seriously.
I'm wearing today is Dopamine Rose by Lepac, which is a newer
Cool.
brand, newer house. We don't say
Yeah.
brand here because house is more elegant. And
Nice.
it's not I don't usually like to wear the sharp, rosy, fruity type fragrances, but it's
Yeah.
really good. It makes
Mm.
me peppy, and I think that I'm acting peppier because of it. I actually was kind of afraid of this one because people were saying it's so loud and youthful and it's like cake and fruit and stuff like that. But to me, it's it's like Delina. If anyone is a Parfum de Marly person, it's like Delina, but a little more zest, I would say.
Ooh.
Okay, so that's where
Love
we're coming.
that.
We're coming to this call with some Wildly Fig and some Dopamine Rose. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm curious for the first thing that I'd like to hear from you is imagine whoever's listening is completely new to the IFS model, but understands that we are built up by a bunch of parts that are in relationship with each other or not. How would you describe an exile, and then how are they different from other types of parts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we haven't really discussed. I don't think we've discussed exiles on the pod much. We haven't
I
had a
don't
whole
think so.
episode about it, right? I don't believe we
I don't think
have, but
so.
we've been meaning to. We just haven't gotten around to it because I think the connection we were going to make was to our wounds, right? Like exiles and wounds or wounding, and where we'd find that in the chart, which maybe we could do a part 2, connecting all of this to what we can connect in our charts, perhaps. So maybe as you're listening to this, you meaning KP, you meaning all of you, maybe reflecting on where you find some of this energy inside of yourself and what those experiences have been like, and if that can connect to any points in the chart. That would be really awesome to hear and discover. Keep that in mind, KP, in
Yeah.
this conversation. I feel like I'm in such a joyful and goofy mood because we were just
Yeah.
literally chit-chatting. KP and I were just chit-chatting for the last probably hour and 45 minutes before we actually
Fine
started
airline.
recording. And we're just having a great time as we always do. So I'm in a pretty good mood, which is I'm just noticing that energy because it feels different from XL energy. So I'm curious how this is going to go because, yeah, I'm in a pretty good place today. And sometimes I don't know. We'll see what the tone is, but I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna be describing a lot of this in a really, I don't know, maybe even a joyful tone, but this is serious stuff. So maybe that's what I'm saying. I might be giggling and having fun, but this aspect of the model and of our internal systems is quite tender. It's tender material. It's maybe some of the most vulnerable stuff inside of ourselves. So, and for that reason, maybe some of my protectors are like, let's keep things light. We don't want to go dig up a bunch of feelings and like vulnerable stuff. And that's awesome. Oh, like also what I see in my practice a lot too with clients. And I think that's one of the reasons why it can be, I don't want to say it's so difficult, but it can be slow and difficult to get to exiles, to get to the point of exiles showing themselves because protector parts, their whole existence is to contain and protect, of course, but really it's containing the feelings that the exile parts carry. So it can be like a real process to actually get to some of the exiled parts, some of the exiled burdens, because protector parts are really doing their jobs and they're like, hell no, we're not going there. Like they're the gatekeepers. They're not going to just let somebody, you know, um, it's like if you think of your internal system as a house and somebody knocks at the door and it's a stranger and they're like, "Hey, can I come in and I want to talk to your 4-year-old." You're as a parent, you're probably going to be like, "No, you
Yeah.
can't. I'm not just gonna let this random person come in and talk to my 4-year-old. Like, who are
Yeah.
you? What do you want? What are you doing? Do I know you're safe?" Right?
I don't
So
have a knife. What?
KP's protectors have weapons.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, just like in in your internal system, like, yeah, you're not gonna just your protectors aren't just gonna let, the therapist or even self, if it's not recognizing who self is yet, just come in and be like, yeah, yeah, my exile's over there in the corner. It's balled up in the corner. Like, go talk to it. It's sad and vulnerable. Yeah, go right on over. Like, it's not gonna be that easy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's an occasional case where it is, or maybe, in some systems, protectors are like, sure, go right ahead. But for the most part, it's probably going to be a little bit of a process to work with those exiled parts.
Okay. And then like why is it important to say this exile part is different from a protector part or maybe a firefighter part? Yeah. And I think you were clear like these parts are the protectors are protecting other people or things or whatever from getting to the exile part because that exile
Yeah.
part needs asked for their protection.
Maybe as the therapist, maybe even as the client to know like what you're working with in a sense that like um some these categories have different energies and yet you're still working with them in the same way. So it feels important because we're treating all of our parts with like honor and grace and all the C words. But it also doesn't really feel so important that you really like classify everything. Like you don't need to get caught up in, is this an exile or is this a protector or is this a firefighter? Or is this, that's pretty much it. But you don't really need to get too caught up in the classification. Um, and there are like subtle differences in how you work with exiles and how you work with protector parts, but I don't have to get too deep into that unless like, you're trained in the model and you're really kind of using it. You want to get protectors permission enough to go to exiled parts and work with those exiled parts to witness them, whatever needs to happen, and hopefully help them unload their burdens. So they're releasing their burdens. And once that happens, they're usually like young children that just want to go play. Like they're free to do whatever they want to do in the system. They don't have to be locked away anymore. And when that process happens, the protector parts that were protecting those parts, the exiled part, they don't also have to work as hard doing their job, right? Because they feel like, oh, okay, like, we're safe. they're safe. I can actually maybe go do something else that's a little less extreme. And maybe they can also unburden something and take up a new job. So there
Yeah.
is like a little bit of a difference in that manager parts, protectors, firefighters, they have a job in the system and it's to protect or keep those feelings away. But exiled parts don't have jobs. Like they are just holding the feeling, whatever the feeling is, whatever experience or trauma, little, big, or trauma happened that triggered them to believe what they're believing and take on the burden of that belief. So whatever that could look like, shame, hurt, pain, sadness, humiliation, rejection, an attachment rupture, or no attachment, or some kind of injury, criticism. There's a lot, deep sadness. So they're just kind of holding those feelings or that feeling, not just because it's a huge job,
Yeah.
but they're not really doing much. So when you're working with parts and you're trying to figure out what kind of part it is in the system, those parts will if you're asking like, what do you do for this person, or what do you do in the system, or do you have a job? They're probably going to be like, no, I don't. And that's a clue. Like, oh, okay, we're working with an exile part here. Um,
Is there like a tell when you know before it's clear that you're working with an Excel part with a client or with yourself? Like, is there like a energetic
yeah,
hint?
I think there is. And I think the more that you become seasoned with this work, I think it becomes very obvious if you're really, if I'm really attuning to the client and the client's energy and their parts, I definitely can feel it. And, if it's not so obvious, like if the person says, oh, maybe we're working with a protector part, and then all of a sudden they say like, oh, I'm feeling a lot of sadness, or I'm noticing sadness, or it's feeling sad, or yeah, usually when someone brings in sadness, that could be an exiled part, or it could be a part that's just feeling some sadness as a protector. But typically it'll be like, oh yeah, that's another vulnerable, it's a younger vulnerable part that's feeling some sadness. And yeah, if they're not actually saying that, yeah, like body language and just energetically, I can sometimes sense it. Like either the person's, I don't know how to explain it. Like I can see, I can just sense what's going on because it feels like they just met something that feels really tender. And
Yeah.
it's like their tone kind of drops, or yeah, they become a little bit more quiet, or I could just sense their self energy shifting to a little bit more compassion or tenderness towards. Yeah. So I do feel like it's pretty noticeable.
That's so interesting. And
Yeah.
so it's clear then when you're working with a protector part, maybe because the energetics are more like protection energy versus like tenderness or what, but it could shame be a protector part and an Excel's part like expression, like a shame
I mean,
maybe.
I'm sure it could be possible. I don't know. Do you see that? Do you
I have
feel
no
that?
idea. We were
I mean,
talking a few weeks ago about shame and, like, as an astrologer, I really don't know where I would go first if someone were to
yeah.
come to me about questions about shame.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think shame would be a little bit more of an exiled feeling, but because if I would see a protective part, let's say, I don't know if I've ever like really witnessed shame as like a protective
Yeah,
feeling. Like it could be defensive. Like if
right.
someone touches shame a little bit, something touches shame, you're probably going to go straight to defensiveness, right?
Yeah.
Like, out like, as a protective strategy. Like, I don't know if I've seen shame as a protective strategy. I mean, it could be
Oh,
influencing what you're doing as a protective strategy, right?
yeah.
But I don't know what that actually looks like outwardly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Would a protector part ever express sadness?
Yeah, I think that I could. Yeah, I think that could. Yeah.
Right.
But I feel like sadness and grief are, it's like I don't really wanna give a general idea about sadness and grief because I feel like they're two really complex things that a lot of parts can feel, and it's something that really needs to be witnessed, like, fully and given just a lot of care,
Yeah.
and so I think so. Yeah, that just feels really I think, like, self could even feel a little bit of sadness, like, it
Yeah.
understands that. Yeah, so that feels complicated.
So now I'm curious, like what would a textbook encounter and like relationship and whatever with an exiled part or an exile look like? Like from meeting to unburdening and then after unburdening. Like what would that look like step by step? Of course there's nuance, everyone has their own experience, but what would that look like?
Yeah, I think kinda like what I was saying when, and they stress this in level 1, like, you don't want to go to an exile part, or if an exile comes up without getting explicit permission from protector parts to go to it,
Yeah.
you really want to, like, kind of tuck it away and go work with protectors first. So, and this is I don't wanna give too much, like, process information for folks who aren't actually practitioners because you might
Yeah.
just might be too much. But, like, high level, it's like you if everything goes textbook or according to plan, then you're, working with protector parts, you're finding out about them, what they do, what they're worried about. You really want to check in with fears and concerns. And once they feel safe and trusting, then you get their permission. You find out, like, oh, who you're protecting. You're protecting this one that feels deep shame. Would it be okay if we go work with that one? And then you transition from the protector parts to the exile part. And the exile part can look like a lot of things, but like, let's say it's like a young 4-year-old part. They're really, it's like, looks like a shrouded figure just covered up with a blanket in the corner of the room, and it's pretty tender. It's really vulnerable, so scared of being seen, so scared of trusting anybody, or feels so lonely or isolated. It feels like it's not lovable. Everyone hates it or wants it to go away. So then you'd work with that. You'd work with, you just try to befriend, give as much compassion and understanding as you can, witness anything that it needs to let you see. And I'm breezing over this. This could take a long time, but I'm speeding
Yeah.
up. But you want to make sure you're doing a lot of witnessing and really understanding what they're carrying, and um and and through that process they may or may not, have something they want to redo, or have you witness something that needs to happen. Sometimes not, doesn't really matter. They just really want you to understand what it feels like to be them. And if there's a little grief, like really being a witness to that grief and really sitting with it. And
Yeah.
then sometimes if you get to the unburdening, maybe there is a belief that they took on, like I'm unlovable. Um, and through the witnessing and, you know, if they're ready to let that go or set that down, then you'll go through the whole process of unburdening that belief. And then they might want to take in new qualities, and then you have this beautiful relationship that it can be ongoing with that part. You want to check in with it again, maybe the next session. So continuity is and consistency is really important so that they feel like they've got a relationship with you. So that can happen in therapy, that can happen outside of therapy. And then you'll kind of continue to check in with that one, and yeah, and then see kind of how the protective parts feel about that, see if they have any, just if they witness that work, and see how they feel about that, and if they are feeling relaxed, or if anything, if they need to let go of anything, and then everything's great, everything's healed and everything's wonderful. So
Yeah.
that's the very abridged version.
Are you open to me kind of doing the derailment thing? Just
Of
very
course,
brief.
of course I
A
am.
brief, cafe walk around the block, and then we'll come back to because I'm curious about the grief.
Yeah,
But while I was listening to you speak, I'm okay, backing up
yeah,
a little bit. I'm currently revisiting a manuscript of a novel that I wrote in 2020, 2021, and so then my mind's, like, in the monomyth, the structure of a plot, narrative, like, movement, that kind of stuff,
yeah,
and the way that you're explaining how this feels is like it's like a novel or it's like a movie, it's like a season of a TV show. You don't just rush into, like, the most tender part, like, you get to know the world a little bit, you get to know the obstacles, the issues,
yeah.
and then you get to, like, the final boss, the dragon or Bowser or whatever.
The dragon.
And it's like, did I say dragon, like a Midwesterner? Dragon.
I love it.
We love the Midwest. Anyway, so while you were talking, I this project is really close to home, and while I'm revising certain scenes, I can feel like the protection layers kind of like coming apart. And I think that I had to have like 4 or 5 years in between the drafting and the revising because I know that there is exile energy in this project. Anyway, so
Oh.
that's my like side thought that's like really clicking
Mm.
with me right now. And I am feeling that energetics of the exile energy. It's like,
Mm.
oh, there's some really deep
Really?
stuff here that is
Wow.
beautiful, and like it really unfurls in the middle to the end, which is where I would say the novel is not quite even finished at all. Anyway,
Mm.
so that's on my mind. It's like IFS is so good for narrative writers. It's so good because you can see
Wow.
in real time like how certain things have to happen before other things in order for it to work, or work's not the best word, but to like for it to feel genuine and alive.
Mhm.
You can't skip to the
Yeah.
end.
Oof. Should I just have a whole program for like IFS for
Yes,
creatives who are working on a long form project?
please. Yes.
Please.
Yes. Because I think that's another thing about the I've not written many manuscripts, novel manuscripts, but I'm on project 4 at this point. Where's I going with that? Yeah, there's certain things that get to the root of the story that you didn't even know you were getting to because you had to like it's you have to pull away the layers of protection, and it does feel like that. And like you're developing this
Yeah.
like it's just like it's such process work, which
Yeah.
I know is such an
Right.
important element to the IFS model. Is like it's a
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
so
like
true.
and then it's so magical when you like, oh, I am actually writing a story about my grandma. I didn't, and I thought I was
Mm.
writing a story about like medieval period or whatever. It's like, no, it's actually
Yeah.
about my grandma. Yeah,
So true. Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
my second. Yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that often just as a society and the way our Western capitalistic society is set up is like to really value like the values are, efficiency, productivity,
yeah,
everything that is a reward of those things, right? Like which is money or whatever, belonging. It's like the ways that we kind of think we're going to get to belonging feel kind of backwards, right? Which is like more productivity or having stuff or money or status. Protectors love them, and they're really good at those things, right? And they're trying to push us towards excelling in all of those ways so that you or me or we don't have to feel the super sensitive and vulnerable feelings that the exiles feel about being unlovable or shameful or isolated or not fitting in. Exiles are, I think, are so concerned about fitting in or had an experience where they felt like they didn't fit in.
yeah,
And that's so painful, right? So protectors are doing everything they can so that you don't have to feel that. It's like they're just trying to survive and preserve life. And I think most people go to therapy because protector parts are like, we don't like this feeling, or like, can you stop making me feel this way? Right? Can you stop making me feel X, Y, and Z, like sad, right? Or
yeah,
hurt, or this attachment thing that happened. I don't want to feel that anymore. Can you make it stop? And so protector parts often come to therapy like thinking, that's what we're going to work on, and they're going to get stronger and the other parts are going to get weaker. And it one of my colleagues said, we had consult group this week, and he said, because we are talking about exiles, and he was like, I think he asked one of his clients, he's like, do you just want to like, would you really just want to live your life being like so productive, but like never having any attachment to anything or anyone, or like any intimate attachment to anything? Like, is that really how you want to live your life? And the answer is probably no.
yeah,
And we need our exiled parts because they're so attachment focused, like they're so attachment oriented. whether they're attaching to us, like self, or other people. And like, yeah, that can produce like a couple problems, but it's also really beautiful that they're so relational and intimacy loving. Cause like we need
Yeah.
that in life too, right? And I think so often we just wanna, like, squash that down because there's all these, like, icky feelings that come along with it because of a lot of those attachment wounds or injuries. Yeah.
I'm really thinking about all of what you just said is like, I'm gonna take a few days to sit with. But that comment you made about one of the values of capitalistic society is belonging, and then you
Mhm.
talked about survivability immediately after that. It's like, yeah, if you don't belong in general, like, you may not survive.
Yeah. It's
So
so
the
true,
stakes are
right?
really high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yet a lot of us find belonging in what, our careers or work or how much we've accomplished, or we think that's where we're gonna find belonging, and then you get there and you're like, "I still don't feel good. Why
Yeah.
am I so isolated at the top?" You know? Yeah.
And in that comment, I'm assuming that there's really strong protectors who are, like, great at Excel spreadsheets because that they found one way to belong and survive,
Yeah.
even though the exile's like, I don't fit here."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capricorns and Virgos, right? They're good at Excel.
I actually know a lot of Geminis who love Excel, but
Really?
I
Okay.
think it's a Mercury thing. I think Mercury's so good at, like,
Oh,
data,
true.
flipping things around and
Yeah.
formulas.
I mean,
Um,
when you know how to unlock, like, like, formulas on
yeah,
Excel, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is amazing."
endless possibilities.
To be able to make a formula and have your Excel do math, I'm like, Whoa."
Yeah, like, I'm still at the sum. That's the formula I can do is sum. Okay, back from the diversion, you brought up in the text messages about grief being, like, grieving with the
Yeah.
exile as being so important, so do you wanna talk about, like, philosophically and practically what grief would look like or feel like?
Yeah, yeah, I was talking with my consult group this week because one of my colleagues, went to a workshop with a lead trainer named Jory Agate, and so they had this discussion about grief and how important grief is to the process of, like, well, honestly, just in general, but to what to understanding exiles, to what, exiles are carrying, and sometimes, if other parts aren't fully, like, trusting self, or you're just noticing, like, maybe some stuck points in the system, and it feels like you're not really getting anywhere, there might be some, like, unhealed grief or unwitnessed grief, and I think that taking as much time as you can with that, I think the important thing is just acknowledging that, like, you can't really put a timeline on witnessing or, like, feeling grief necessarily, and making sure that that's fully being witnessed and not, yeah, just kind of blown over, and that could take a while. Yeah, but I think
Yeah,
really being able to really just be with the part in its grief and what the experience of that was, right? Um, and not necessarily trying to unburden that experience or get rid of that experience,
yeah,
but really giving that experience and what it felt like to be in that experience, like it's full what it deserves. Yeah, it's full attention, and beliefs can, like I said, be unburdened and released and let go. And sometimes the experiences, there might be grief in that experience or whatever the experience was. It might not be so easy to let that go, or that might, stay with you in some ways because it really needs to be understood. And um I think often protector parts can sometimes be like quick or impatient in wanting to kind of move past those experiences, or yeah, don't want you to look too closely at those, right,
yeah,
because of those feelings, so that it requires a lot of self-energy to be able to sit with and really fully understand and witness what it felt like to be this part in that experience,
yeah,
and what the part took away from that. What did it start to believe and feel about you, about itself in that experience? And does anything need to happen? And I'm so sorry that, like, there wasn't an adult, there for you at that moment. Like, that's really unfair, but it's got you there now, and really making sure that the vulnerable parts, like, really feel like, self is there and, yeah, really making sure it feels understood. Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, listening to you, I'm thinking about how grief, like, experiencing grief actively feels so good. And I'm
Yeah.
interrogating that in my head, like, why does it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good like wearing perfume. It doesn't feel
Ah,
good a good chat with a friend, but there's something that is so rich, right? That feels good. Like you're creating this like greater capacity and that's the goodness of it. So I'm like, how do I convince myself? Because there's gonna be a moment where I'm gonna run away from grief. That
mm,
it feels so good when you lean in and when you choose to do
mhm,
that, and
mhm.
especially when thinking about, like, when you're sitting with an exile, like, it feels so good to be present, or
Yeah,
all the C's of the self, like,
yeah.
clear, compassionate, to witness someone else's grief and feel it inside of yourself because this is a part of you. Anyway, so I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, how would you how would you make a case that for grieving with an exiled part being, like, a good experience, a pleasurable experience?
Well, I would just ask, what part of you is needing to be convinced?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like there's parts there. Because I don't think
Mhm.
self needs to be convinced that it's a good idea. Because
Interesting.
it just knows it's like, oh yeah, like,
Yeah.
or yeah, it's just easy for self to be there in that, right? Because self doesn't really feel like it has to do anything. It's
Yeah.
just witnessing, right? So any
Doesn't.
parts of you that are feeling like, "Ugh, I don't know if this is gonna feel good. I don't like, why should I do this? Why is this a good idea?"
Yeah.
So that's where I would start.
So, why do you think so many people avoid active grieving?
Why do you think so? I mean, I feel like we could all answer this as a part of this the same society that we're in, right? You probably have an answer.
I don't know. That's where, like, my mind is going. It's like, why is it avoided if it
You
really
think we're
does.
not really taught that in America?
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
and it's
right?
we're not taught that when people die. We're also not taught that when, like, a project ends or you leave a job. Like, we're not really taught.
Yeah.
It's not like one of those things that are like the baby shower, like, it's
Yeah.
not a part of our culture to make it a marked thing,
Yeah.
other than,
I think that I think we're so afraid of feeling sad and
Yeah,
right? And I think that I think protective parts are so afraid that like sad feelings in particular are going to flood the system
yeah,
and they have so many concerns about what could happen if sadness flooded the system.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, everything would you couldn't survive.
Yeah, that's what they think. Yeah.
That's the big fear is like, "Oh, we won't survive if we feel this
And
phenom."
also, and I think a lot of protector parts are worried that the person that you will get re-triggered or like you will get hurt again, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, they're so worried about sadness flooding the system and that the person will get hurt again in the same way that they already were hurt. The exile parts will be re traumatized or further isolated or wounded, rejected again, right? So, all the things that have happened, they're so worried that all that's going to happen again.
yeah,
Yeah, which is unbearable for the system, right? Or they think it's completely unbearable. Like we cannot let that happen. We can't do that again. Because what happens if, you know, Bobby Joe gets hurt again? Like
yeah,
she'll have no, purpose to live, or she'll be completely alone, and that's just unbearable for the system. So
yeah. Can I ask, okay, so the unburdening process, is that always before or after grieving with exiled part?
you said unburdening. You're wondering about unburdening.
If it's like
So
where
that's
that happens with grieving.
yeah, and that's kind of like the last step, but but it's also a part of the whole unburdening process. So, like the actual like letting go of the belief is usually something that happens, at the last few steps. So you want to be able you wanna really sit with grief or you wanna sit with and witness whatever the exile part is showing you or needs you to know about itself. So in that witnessing, maybe there's grief, maybe there's other stuff, and it's gonna let you know what that is. And so you
Yeah.
just wanna make sure that you're spending enough time really witnessing whatever that is, whatever it needs to show you and tell you through
Yeah.
words or through images or past experiences or just body sensations. Sometimes they don't have words because 'cause they're young babies. So, yeah, you're really just sitting with and being present with that with them. Yeah.
Feel the feelings and then release. What unburdening would you use the word release for the unburdening process?
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hold before you can let go. Yeah. I'm like, I feel like I'm getting a lot of insight about process work, um,
Oh, yeah?
about the novel, thinking about life,
Yeah.
relationships, everything. Yeah. Yeah. Is there something that's coming up for you when you're thinking about process work or something like that? Like creative development, long-term stuff.
Like, creative process work
Yeah.
in relation to exiles?
Yeah.
I had never thought about that, so I don't know if I have an answer. I don't wanna give an answer without really thinking about it.
Wow.
But b I like that trailhead.
Yeah. Have you worked with exiles in an art therapeutic kind of situation?
Probably. I mean, I'm sure I have. I don't know if I have a clear example, but yeah. And, I think it's maybe more common to work with more protective parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not like it would be unwelcome. It's like I could do that, but I feel like it's maybe less common. But
Yeah.
but I've worked with my own in my own through my own therapy. Like I've done my own kind of art therapy with my exile parts. Yeah, just on my own.
Do you want to share about that?
Just, generally, like, I will depict them in image. Yeah, or with an image.
Do you hang them up somewhere?
No,
No.
no. They're
Okay.
usually just, like, in a notebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could do that. I don't know. I'd have to check with the if that's what my parts would like. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah, yeah. That'd be kinda
So in
cool.
this moment, I'm applying it to astrology.
Okay, great.
What we do on this podcast. And I think when looking at a birth chart, like it being an image of an exact moment in time, I think
Yeah.
there's this like desire to jump to the end or to like,
Oh.
process work is not so obvious or it's not, I don't think it's like it's the preferred mode when you're looking at a birth chart. But I'm thinking about a transiting chart, like when the planets are moving around your chart, like always, nothing stops. We're always in motion. That is where process work feels more apparent in the astrological practice. And I don't have any conclusions to make right now, but that's where I'm like thinking it's like interesting that I don't think you can be like, you have an Excel part doing this with the, like I think that's really dangerous and kind of like not
Yeah,
the point. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's where I'm starting with applying this to astrology.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah. And a couple episodes ago, we talked about parts activation as it relates to transits. And I
mhm.
do wonder if the logic that we were talking about, like a part being activated with a transit kind of thing, would
Right.
also be a way to consider how you would approach the protectors of an exile or an exile in a moment. Like if you know that there's a certain planet activating something inside of you, you may want to explore an exile you know that's there, but you haven't taken the time to meet them yet or something like that.
Yeah,
But I think this is one of the parts of IFS where like so much nuance is
yeah,
purpose. The purpose is it's yeah, if you know what I mean, like finding all of the true intricate human life experiences with this
mm.
part where I'm looking at a chart of data, I think is not helpful at all.
At all? Okay, it's a little helpful.
I don't know.
Oh,
I think
okay.
when we get to the exile
Yeah,
experience, no, I don't
yeah,
know if it's helpful.
okay. Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
I would love to be challenged on that, but yeah.
Well, let me just run through, like, a list. Let me just say the common traits of exiles. How about that?
Yeah.
and see to make sure, like, you're really getting or everyone's getting the essence or energy of it. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Dependent, spontaneous, open, fearful, shamed, sad, frozen, fragile, unlovable, abandoned, angry, powerless, sensitive, empty, hopeless, helpless, worthless, and hurt. Those are just a few
And those are common feeling
traits.
traits that, like, exiles
Traits.
would express.
Yeah, how they're feeling, what they kind of identify with.
Yeah.
So that, that's a lot of things, but
It is, yeah.
yeah, reflecting on ways that you felt any of those in maybe more extreme ways, right? Or, it doesn't even have to be that extreme. It's like it could be sort of a little T trauma, like, and I think this happens a lot where exiles, especially younger ones who have some really like damaging experience as a young person. Like, I feel like I hear this a lot from other people in the IFS world, having like a young part that experienced something really, kind of humiliating or rejecting, like, in school, right? Either with a teacher calling them out, making them kind of embarrassing them, right? Or making you write something on the board and, like, you don't know how to do it, or something around public speaking, right? Giving a speech in class and, like, getting, I don't know, embarrassed about something you did wrong. Anything you'd be shamed for or punished, right? Whether you did something wrong or not, right? Or any criticism at all or judgment, especially in a moment where you weren't really doing anything wrong and you were just being a kid, right? And you were maybe you were even being playful or social or like just a kid, curious, and you got in trouble for that. Or yeah, somebody punished you or whatever happened. And I'm using those examples because it's like it I think often is something that like is triggered by another person or somebody says something, some event happens and you go from being that exuberant little kid who's just like, "Oh, I'm playing." And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're told, you're criticized for being, I don't know, dumb or dirty or wild or, just a kid doing kid stuff. And
Yeah.
then in those moments, the part makes up a belief, right? It's like it starts to believe something about you, about that situation. Like, I must be bad or I'm bad, or I'm dumb. I don't know anything. I need to shut my mouth. We can't speak again in class, right? Or, yeah, I'm never going to raise my hand again. So often, really young exile little parts can have something like that. Or like, I feel like this is also common, like middle school parts or like elementary age parts that were like not invited to a birthday party or had a friend break up. And even though that's so common for that age developmentally, right? So much friend drama, but
Yeah.
sometimes parts really like latch on. Like something can be really traumatizing, right? In that like, you're not invited to a birthday party or a friend just stops being friends with you for no reason and you don't know why. And parts can make up a lot of stories about that. Or, they make up a belief and then protector parts come in and they're like, well, we're never going to do this ever again. Or we're never going to put ourselves out there. Or,
Yeah.
however they organize around that. Yeah. So those are just like a few, I think, maybe more common things that I see with exiles and how they come to be and then how they kind of how the system gets organized around some of those events.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I'm wrong, and it's like
Are you like reflecting on all of your childhood experiences right now or what? Did I just bring you back to like elementary school and you're like, fuck
yeah, what was I told? Are you talking about your Leo first house? Like, being told not to be
me?
joyful and loud?
Oh, am I? Kinda.
And I'm like,
No,
I
I
think
was
you're
not like
saying
that
a
at
lot.
school. I was like not loud in school as a young person. I was like quiet and studious and probably much more cancer.
Yeah,
Really kept to myself. I was like way too afraid of getting in trouble.
yeah.
But at home, I was a wild Leo.
Where I was going was, like, I do remember being told to be more responsible, even though I was, like, the most responsible kid, but I was still, I felt terrible because someone told me to be more responsible. I was like, "Is that the Capricorn
Mm,
first house? Like, is it that simple?"
mm,
That, like, the way people perceive me is how they, like, need me to be, so then I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna do that."
mm.
I can't fuck off and, go run
Yeah.
around in the field.
Man, oh, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. let's go back in time and be friends
Okay.
in middle school and bend each
I
other's
would
ears about
love
parts.
that. I would love that,
Mm.
except I'm 5 years older than you, so I would not hang out with you.
Well, in this scenario, we're the same age and we're
Okay,
in choir
okay,
class
good.
together.
Okay, good. I mean, yeah, we have to be, yeah.
Yeah. And we're trading notes, but, like, so discreetly that no one knows that we're doing it, but we're, like, writing, like, a whole novel between each other. Yeah,
Oh, how sweet. Yeah, my parts would love that.
me too.
Yeah.
I think we should leave it here because,
Yes.
wow, I feel like I just read a whole textbook about exiles.
Really?
So thank
Wow.
you so much,
Wow. Did I do
teacher.
my job? Was I thorough?
Yeah.
I feel
You're
like I just
I love how you're
rambles.
thorough in, like, the illustrative, emotional way.
Ah,
That's so good for me.
really? Wow. Okay, my
Mhm.
parts love hearing that. Thank you. Good feedback.
And my parts wanna go have what's it called? A hokey day? Oh my god, play hooky. I can't even
Play hooky.
remember the word for hooky.
Wow. Oh, you're gonna go play hooky?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think I might. No, I should do work.
Yeah. Well, I think that it would be really cool to make more connections in any way that we can to astrology. But I do feel like it's so dependent on an individual's chart, and it's hard
Yeah,
to
and
make, like,
disclaimer.
really concrete or general, like, this wound but I would say, like, okay, look at whatever the wounds are, and, I know we look at Chiron for that, and I can definitely trace some, because my Chiron is in my, 10th house, is that right?
11th.
Is it? Yeah, because it's really close to my Venus, right? And I can for sure trace some exiled parts to that aspect, like, in terms of what that kinda represents for femininity and body or
Yeah,
all that kinda stuff. So there's definitely something there, but, like, it's not like that there's like, hundreds of other exiles too,
right.
that don't relate to that stuff, but there's probably some big ones for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction is, like, a big one is
Yeah.
probably your Chiron, but I do
Oh,
think every single placement would have an exiled experience related
yeah.
to it.
Probably every house, right? Every house probably
Yeah.
has multiple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every asteroid, like your the degree of your ascendant, I'm sure, is related to one of your exiles. But yeah, I
Oh,
think
do you know?
Chiron is where you could start for sure.
Yeah.
The moon is where you would start, like, because that's a tender spot for everyone, and like we
Yeah.
tend to protect what like is concerned with safety and security the most. So
Yeah.
that's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, every planet would have intensity with
But
exile
since
and
mine's in, like, 1st house and in Leo, it's like, well, actually, I really, I am I want to also just, like, acknowledge and honor my parts for allowing me to get to this point of expressing myself
yeah,
publicly. And I also just wanna, I wanna send some compassion and love to my parts because, honestly, as a person who, like, probably has some wounding around no, not probably. There was definitely moments in my, middle school career, elementary career, where I was so deathly afraid of public speaking, and in the moment when you, like, become aware that people are observing you and perceiving
yeah,
you at that age, and, like, in that self-consciousness that came up, which feels like such a big deal at the time, and my system really organized around that, like, "Ooh, I do not wanna be seen in this way." I remember, like, having to give oral book reports back in that time and having to, like, memorize something and speak in front of the whole class. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
yeah,
Like, I
for
feel like
sure.
I'm gonna die. I did everything I could to get out of that, and really kind of, like, picked up beliefs that, like, public speaking wasn't okay, and I wouldn't be okay, and maybe I'm kinda dumb, or I'm so worried about being dumb, or I'm so worried about not knowing what to say, or freezing up, and then, like, blinking, and then, like, having to run away.
Yeah,
And so I'm really, like, proud of myself for where I've gotten to now. Like, I've come a long way going through college, going through grad school, becoming a lot more self-led after grad school. And now, like, I could give a presentation and I'm fine.
yeah,
I can speak on this podcast and I'm fine. I can speak in a Zoom meeting of 50 people and not sweat and lose my train of thought. So, yeah, I'm really sending some love to my parts, my exile parts.
Yeah.
and my protectors for allowing me to get to where I'm at now. And you can too.
Simple. I mean, your Leo Mercury in the first house is very happy.
Yeah.
So happy for
I don't
you.
think it always was, but now it must be.
I mean, I think it's up.
That
Yeah.
is true. Forgot about Mercury. Yeah, that's true.
Let's leave it at that. That's Exile parts. Thank you, Chelsea. If we do a part two, we'll let you know because it'll be published.
You're like, we're not making any promises, but
Have a good day,
yeah. Okay,
everyone.
bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us for Parts and Charts, the IFS and Astrology podcast. If something sparked insight or resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you.
No, really, we're here to make friends. Reach out to us. Leave a comment, subscribe, and if you feel called, share this episode with someone you care about. Or, if you want to work with us one-on-one and go deeper with this work, check the link in the show notes for how to find us.
Until next time, may all of you feel a part of the family.